So the DOT is awarding Wyoming with about $26 million. It's going to go towards two new semi-truck parking areas along I-80 near Evanston, Wyoming. Secretary Buttigieg, tell us a little bit more about the project and why it's happening now on this specific stretch of road.
I think in the last couple of years, people have begun to really understand how personal and how important supply chains are. And one of the most important parts of our supply chains are truckers, long-haul trucking. And having grown up about a mile from I-80 in a very different part of the country, in northern Indiana, I know how important those networks and those interstates are from coast to coast. Truck parking has been a quality of life issue and even a safety issue for truck drivers at a moment when we're really trying to support truck drivers and encourage them to stay in the profession.
Yeah, and actually the federal government just announced another new funding project to build wildlife crossings across the country, and I know that really resonates with people here in Wyoming. Why is this a priority for your department?
Yeah, wildlife crossings are important not just for conservation purposes, but for life safety purposes. We have over 1 million wildlife vehicle collisions in the country. They're responsible for an estimated 200 to 300 deaths a year. And, especially in the West, where you have a lot of bigger animals that wind up on these roadways, this can be a real challenge and a real concern. I think that's one of the reasons why this turned out to be a very bipartisan priority. I've had great conversations with Senator Lummis and with the governor about how these dollars are going to make a difference. So we got $24 million headed to the Wyoming Department for a wildlife crossing project in southwest Wyoming, where it's very much needed. And we're excited to see those funds go to make safer roadways and better habitats.
Yeah, it's already with the wildlife crossings we have made a huge difference. Another thing with getting around Wyoming is the roads can be hard to travel, and especially if you're going by electric vehicle. That's something that's come up recently in Wyoming. Wyoming actually didn't take some federal funding over concerns about demand and distance requirement between electric vehicle chargers, and it was to help build out that infrastructure. I'm curious how the DOT could work with rural states like Wyoming to better support EV infrastructure.
Well, I know this might be surprising, but rural states are arguably the best place for EVs. And the reason I say that is that rural residents are more likely to live in single-family homes with garages, which means they might already have the charging infrastructure of a plug in the wall, and tend to drive longer distances, which means you'll save more money if you have, for example, an electric pickup and you don't need gas or diesel. You tend to save money on those fueling costs. Now, the other side of the coin is rural residents tend to drive longer distances, and if you are routinely driving more than 100 or 200 miles a day, which some people do in places like Wyoming, you need to know there's going to be a charger when you need it. We're requiring that there be charging stations every so many miles. We're going to be common sense about it. We know that not every state is the same, but the general goal across the country is to make sure that at least every 50 miles you're going to come to a charger. We've had good conversations with the state, and they've put together a plan on how to use those dollars.
Secretary Buttigieg, often there's a little bit of mistrust of the federal government sometimes in Wyoming. I'm curious if there's anything else you want to add about these projects that might help people warm up to the idea.
Well, look, I think the best way to earn trust is to get results. And when people don't see results, they get frustrated. I think over the last 30, 40 years, there's been a somewhat poor record of infrastructure investment in this country that's made a lot of people cynical about infrastructure, so-called infrastructure week that kept being announced in Washington, didn't come to much. But that's exactly why we were so excited about the bipartisan infrastructure package. Emphasis on the word bipartisan. A lot of Republicans crossed the aisle to work with Democrats and President Biden to get this package done. And now the results are coming back to places like Wyoming.
Well, thank you so much. We've been speaking with Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Great speaking with you.